What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so recently the sports world saw the enshrinement of longtime basketball stars in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, and women's basketball star Maya Moore. But we also saw the enshrinement of the 2008 so-called Redeem Team, the 2008 American men's basketball team, which restored America as the preeminent basketball hub in the world after the disappointing losses in 2004 in Athens and the 2006 FIBA tournament, where America also lost. Coincidentally, both teams were led by none other than, players like Lebron James. All right. Anyway, on that 2008 Redeem team was Michael Redd, who was a longtime star, well, before the injuries at least, with the Milwaukee Bucks, one of the sharpshooters in the league at that time. And he recently started his own podcast, right? And on this podcast, Michael Redd talked about how around the time of the Redeem team, like around that time, a little bit afterwards, for that 2-year window before LeBron James teamed up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami, he said you were starting to see more and more talk of players conversing with one another, talking about joining up and teaming up and forming quote unquote super teams, right? And he talked about how prior to that, that's not something that players wanted to do. Players, had honor and wanting to beat their rivals with the teams that they grew up with, or not grew up with, but teams that they were drafted by and teams that they were a part of. That it basically was territorial pride almost. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm with the Bulls. This is the organization I'm with. I want to beat you because you're one of my rivals, and I want to beat you with this team. I don't want to team up with you. I want to beat you, and I want bragging rights. And then he said that changed. But anyway, here's Michael Redd right here.
Some of the conversations circle around, maybe we team up. What if we play together, right? Like that notion of like the super teams coming together.
'08.
And '08 was happening then, '07 and '08. Yeah. Like, yo, what if we played together? How would that look? What if we played together?
Yeah. And 2 years later, you got LeBron and D-Wade. 3 years later, 100%. CP and Kobe for a minute.
There you go. And it all spawned from that moment together because we actually found out that we do actually like each other. And like, I like your game. And like,
we could both be stars.
Yeah. Exactly. That was a foreign thought back then. And we all, at that time, the climate in the league that time was we all took pride in having our own individual teams, and we didn't want to team up because it was a sign of cowardice, or like there's pride in having your own squad.
Yeah.
And that was the predominant cloud over the NBA. Now it's changed, obviously, in the last 15 years. But back then, that was the thing. That's where it kind of began.
And speaking of that Redeem team, Kobe Bryant was the antithesis of teaming up, and the guy basically ran Shaq off because he wanted to prove that he could win without one of the most dominant centers in the history of the league. He wanted to prove that he could win as the lead guy. And, if it had been about winning, he would have kept Shaq around. But he wanted to win. Ultimately, they did acquire Pau Gasol because no matter how great you are, you still need help. And Pau Gasol ultimately became a 2-time NBA champion. And largely, Pau Gasol became a Hall of Famer because he played with Kobe Bean Bryant. Because You could tumble to 20,000 points, but remember, Tom Chambers has 20,000 points and he's not in the Hall of Fame. But if Tom Chambers won 2 championships with the Bulls or whatever, I'm pretty sure he'd be in the Hall of Fame. And you could argue that guys like LeBron and, especially LeBron at that time, who felt so much pressure, calling himself the king. You had the people like Skip Bayless saying he's the king without a ring, etc. There was some jealousy there. You see a guy like Kobe win back-to-back championships, and Wade has one, and Wade at the time was, 28? And then you have a guy like LeBron who has no rings. He has no rings, and he's in his 7th year. At that time, I think he was in his 7th year in the league. By Michael Jordan's 7th year, he won a championship. So LeBron knew, I won't say the clock was running out, but excuses. Excuses were running out. So he sold his basketball soul and he formed a super team. And a lot of us do feel like that was cowardly because I don't care what anybody says. I think the Cavaliers could have won a championship. They could have. When you look at how they dominated the regular season, and I know people say, well, regular season one thing and the playoffs is another. But honestly, those Cavalier teams, you didn't hear this thing about him playing with a bunch of bums until years later when a lot of his fanboys needed to revise history. So they just created this excuse that, because I don't know who these guys are, and because they weren't on a whole bunch of all-NBA or all-defensive teams or all-NBA teams or all-stars, therefore they're not great. They're not really good players. Therefore, that was the reason why he lost. But in reality, a lot of those guys were really, really good players. And when you look at some of the great championship teams in history, it's not necessarily, 2, 3 all-stars and a bunch of role players, but oftentimes it's one all-star or one superstar and a collection of really good role players who know their roles, know what they got to do, and are prepared to go out there and play 48 minutes of excellence on the basketball court. You know what I'm saying? The problem with those Cavalier teams was honestly LeBron James. The system in itself is flawed because it holds back certain players from doing what they have to do. And at that time, LeBron James had a serious flaw in his arsenal. He still has flaws, but back then, his flaws were his outside shooting. Hell, his mid-range shooting is still flawed. But anyway, when I saw him walk off the court after the Celtics beat his Cavaliers in 2010 in a series in which they were favored to win, I knew he was going to quit. I could see it in his body language. I could see it in his body language after having collected a triple-double that nobody cared about. I could tell that he was going to quit. And, look, is cowardice a strong word? That's what Michael Redd is saying. That's how, what guys like LeBron did was perceived as cowardice. So that's how I look at it, man. Tell me what you guys think.